That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
The Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern.
New information about Karen Reed's defense team is giving the judge grave concern. Now she must determine whether a fraud on the court was committed. We'll discuss. And the prosecution is fighting back against the witness harassment and bullying that's been going on, calling out the embattled protester and defendant known as Turtle Boy, saying that he has a symbiotic relationship with defendant Karen Reed. Also this hour, we're spotlighting the heartbreaking case of 3 children who police say were abandoned for years, living in filth and surviving on bread and the occasional DoorDash. Plus, the verdict reaction that has everybody talking. A$AP Rocky jumping into the arms of Rihanna. But what about that mysterious prop gun? We've got a firearms expert here to show us his. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. It's time for some coffee and some court. We got a great show planned, so let's get started. Grab your coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. No crowd surfing in the courtroom, except if you're A$AP Rocky. Apparently, he forgot he was in court and thought he was at one of his concerts when he dove into the gallery. Loud cheers erupting after the not guilty verdict was read, and Rocky dove right into the gallery to hug his beautiful partner, Rihanna. That was a moment for him and a moment for trial watchers all over who've really never seen a celebratory dive quite like that. Now, after all, Rocky is a musician, so the crowd surfing inclination kind of makes some sense, right? But what didn't make a whole lot of sense in this case was the evidence. A very shaky victim, no gun ever recovered, and conflicting witness accounts. I completely understand why Rocky didn't take that deal for 180 days. He was smart to take this to trial, and he was smart not to testify at the trial. He made excellent trial decisions, and it sure paid off. So now it's time to get back to making music, spending time with his family, and maybe doing some crowd surfing at his next concert instead of the courtroom. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Zach is going to testify because Zach has been waiting for this opportunity to tell a group of people like you what really happened, which is that he took the life of Christina Parcell, and crucially, he's been waiting and wanting to tell you why.
In South Carolina, we've got defendant Zachary Hughes in the Rose Petal murder trial expected to testify today in his own defense. Court's going to start up at 9:30. We're going to go in there live when he's on that stand. In California, we've got the testimony continuing in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for Monica Simontilli. That one starts up at noon. And in Georgia, we've got defendant Edric Faust with a hearing this morning at 9 a.m. He's accused of murdering University of Georgia student Tara Baker back in 2001. Now, we turn to our top story this morning. We've got a new twist, so to speak, in the Karen Reed case. A motions hearing on Tuesday abruptly ending after Judge Beverly Cannone learned information that gave her grave concern.
The Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel. So for that reason, I'm going to suspend today so that when we meet again to address these issues, all affected will be appropriately prepared. So I'll see you a week from today at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Now, it's hard to see because of our banner at the bottom of the screen, but the judge was shaking there. She was actually visibly shaking. She had her eyeglasses in her hand and was shaking, having what seems to be a visceral reaction to this news. So here's what it's about. Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan revealed that the ARCA experts, remember these guys, they were great witnesses for the defense in the first trial. Well, the defense team at the first trial had represented to the court that they were completely independent. They had represented that they had not had trial preparation work with them, that they were not paying them, that they were hired by the federal government, and that they were completely unbiased, independent witnesses. Well, that turned out not to be true. Hank Brennan alerting to the court communications that did go on, discussions about what to say and not to say in the courtroom, and they'd been paid $23,000.
I'm not saying that undermines the conclusions of ARCA, or not. I'm not saying they're not qualified witnesses, but it certainly shows some bias. Statistically speaking, most pedestrian fatalities occur during the evening and night hours. That would have been nice to have. And then he comments, if you don't want me to say this, that's fine. That's fine. Shh. Don't tell them. And then a bill from ARCA to the defense for $23,925. That's not trample. That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
This is incredibly serious, what happened here, because lawyers take an oath to act as officers of the court and must act with honesty and integrity at all times. And so now there's a question of whether a deliberate misrepresentation was made. That is the question. The judge has to determine whether there was a fraud perpetrated on the court by these attorneys. That is the question. And so she's requesting all parties reconvene next week. She's giving everyone time to prepare, and she noted that she wants to see all those communications that attorney Hank Brennan had received from the federal government that showed the talks that were in fact had between Karen Reed's lawyers and those ARCA witnesses who were represented to be independent. Now let's talk about this. I have two great guests standing by. I want to bring them in now. The former head of the homicide unit in the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. He's in private practice now in Massachusetts. Attorney Rick Grundy is with us. And nationally known radio host. He's also the creator and the host of the show Road Patrol Live, John DePietro. Good morning to you both. I want to start, please, with your reactions to what we saw yesterday with respect to Hank Brennan revealed about these ARCA witnesses and the defense attorneys. And John DePietro, I'm going to start with you, please.
You know, Julie, this was so significant, and just the visual of what you were just showing on the screen, Alan Jackson, and people need to understand, Alan Jackson, he is the defense. He's the face of the defense. He's, as I would describe, he's like the straw that stirs the drink. He was beet red during this whole thing. When Hank Brennan let this out, Julie, I think also the judge, I was in court when the ARCA experts were there. I think there was something about her gut that told her that there was something fishy about this whole thing. And then fast forward, and then it all comes out in court. This is very, very significant because this never really made sense of how they came away with something very different that essentially the state police came away with, and what just common sense said, that she did in fact hit him with the car. But Alan Jackson beat red. And also, if you look in the corner of the screen where Peg O'Keefe, Julie, huge smile. That's the most I've seen her smile in a very, very long time. Peg O'Keefe, mother of John O'Keefe, recognizing how significant this was. This was a judge, I think. I think this boots Jackson. And I also think Unetti's in trouble. And one more thing I just want to point out.
Sure.
Not only was the reaction of normally they would leap up, Your Honor, I, strongly object to what we hear. They were dead silent. You could tell Jackson, very uncharacteristically quiet. Unetti just staring straight ahead. This, maybe feels that this isn't, he's the one of his making. But their non-reaction, I found very significant.
Excellent points, John. And we're going to talk about what implications could come. As you both know, this is as serious as it gets if there's a misrepresentation made to a court of law. And so we're going to talk about all of that. John, thank you. I want to play the moment, that moment where it was all revealed. Let's watch.
On June 10, 2024, you asked the defense about ARCA, and it was represented these experts were hired by the federal government, and they provided a report to us pursuant to a TUI request. It was specifically outlined and ruled that they could not prep with us for trial.
That they could not prep with us for trial.
So I'm to believe that the defense is calling 3 witnesses that you've never spoken to and putting them on the stand here
That's essentially it. We've spoken to them only for the purposes of coordination of their testimony and their background. That's it.
Do you see what we did here? We went back in time. We pulled that video that Hank Brennan referenced yesterday, that moment where the representation is made. Rick Grundy, let me go to you next for your reaction, please.
Well, it's interesting to see how these things play out. We're going to get a dog and pony show on the 25th from the defense about how this was misinterpreted, that this all comes out of this discovery issue with these folks. But it certainly seems that the smoking gun is there. And in looking at the motion of the Commonwealth and the opposition filed by Alan Jackson, I think the prosecution put a little bit of a Trojan horse in there because I believe it was on the 14th of February, they file a motion reigniting the issue that with respect to these individuals in their outfit, they want discovery. And the defense who's calling them has not provided any further discovery. Within that motion, there is no mention of these communications that run afoul.
Oh, and we just lost you again there, Rick. We're having some troubles with your signal. Going back to that moment in time, because I wondered when Hank Brennan was talking about it, I was trying to remember, was that a moment we saw in court? And we did see it. We went back, Court TV went back, finding that video. So the judge is going to remember this very clearly, as you said, John DePietro. She remembers asking them clearly, are these independent witnesses that you were not paying, essentially? And David Dinetti, you used the word essentially. Essentially, yes, we haven't had time to prep with them, haven't had communications, but yet it was revealed, as you know, John, that the ARCA witnesses had back and forth discussions with Alan Jackson about what to say and not say. And so now the concern, Hank Brennan was very precise, saying, I'm not trying to prevent the ARCA witnesses from coming in. I'm exposing what seems to be bias that was covered up. John, how do you think Judge Cannone is reacting to this when she went into chambers and came out shaking?
Yeah, you know what, Julie? I think she really saw that just the clip you played, and that's a great clip that you grabbed, that she even had reservations and found it a little hard to believe. And I think she wanted to reiterate and make sure that she had asked the proper questions. But make no mistake about it, what was revealed was there was communication, and he was basically communicating with the defense, that Daniel Wolf of, you basically tell me, you know, what you want me to say, I can frame it a certain way. He even raised that, you know, in case I didn't really examine the car, if they bring that up, here's how we get around it. I think this is very significant, Julie. And, you know, Alan Jackson, I think he was, you know, he's been difficult. At times he's taken over the courtroom. I think the judge was aghast that basically that these were not only proven, but it really showed that they kind of pulled one over on her. So that's, as someone that has watched her for countless hours, that is the most visibly shaken that I have seen this judge, who, again, very calm, cool, collected. I think she wanted to make sure she had all her ducks in a row. But make no mistake about it, what Hank Brennan exposed was they were disingenuous, misled the court when they said they had not been communicating with that witness.
John, you're so right. And as you know, this can have far-reaching implications, as Her Honor alluded to. I believe her words were this can potentially have big impact, she said, on defense and defense counsel. Depending upon what the court finds, as you know, John, counsel could be removed. I mean, if there is a situation of fraud on a court, I mean, you know, John, lawyers, they can be disbarred. I mean, it can have far-reaching consequences here. So this is as serious as it gets. And there was more in that hearing yesterday, as you know, John. This was just one of those big moments. So you're going to stick with us, and we're going to turn to the other big moment right after the break, as this motions hearing turned into a pivotal day in the case over the death of Officer John O'Keefe. When we come back here on Opening Statements, we'll continue discussing what happened and turn to big moment number 2, where Hank Brennan said, enough of the show, exposing the relationship between Karen Read and Turtle Boy and Karen Read's lawyers. We'll talk about it.
You wouldn't do this to an animal, let alone your child. So, you know, just to hear that he came out to touch the grass is just crushing, soul crushing on so many levels.
A Michigan mom arrested after abandoning her kids for years. The kids left in a house of horrors. Two innocent children put to bed,
only to awaken to the sound of gunfire.
Now a father stands trial accused of shooting his own kids in their bunk beds, killing one.
I hope that this individual feels the full weight of the criminal justice system and never sees the light of day.
Court TV takes you inside this tragic case,
as a jury must now decide the fate of this father.
Because not one, but 2 doctors, trained pathologists, who have looked at thousands of autopsy photos and testified in thousands of cases, all agree those are dog bites on John Brennan.
The case against Karen Read is what's trending in true crime this morning. Welcome back. The Commonwealth, in that pivotal motions hearing on Tuesday, revealing to the court and to everybody watching that her defense team has a symbiotic relationship with the blogger and defendant and protesters you saw there, Aiden Kearney, also known as Turtle Boy. Now, Read's defense team petitioning to add an attorney named Mark Betterow to their team, who represents Turtle Boy in his witness harassment case. Now, all the witnesses who are the victims in his case are the witnesses in Karen Read's case. Now, Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan spoke up, saying he doesn't oppose Betterow's addition to the team, but alerted the court to the connection to Turtle Boy.
There is a history, a symbiotic relationship between Ms. Read and Mr. Kearney. There is a history of documented evidence showing the sharing of discovery between the parties. And being in a position of representing 2 different defendants who are not co-defendants, being in that position is going to be a difficult task to manage, and I am worried, and I have good reason to be worried, about the privacy of our protected material. I have good reason to be concerned about the improper dissemination of our material. I have a reason to be concerned about the continued harassment and bullying of witnesses. And this information, if a court order won't protect it, then nothing will.
That moment gave me chills. That was a moment where he was standing up and fighting for all of those innocent people who've been unnecessarily and unfairly bullied and harassed because of them being willing to come forward and swear under oath and tell the truth about what happened the night John O'Keefe was killed. So now, let's talk about what should happen. Hank Brennan is so smart. He might be the most precise prosecutor I've ever seen in my life. He said to the court, I don't oppose that attorney coming in. They want that attorney to come in. Every defendant has a right to counsel of their choosing. What I'm suggesting is that the court take a look, and that we, the Commonwealth, don't even need to be there when you do. Just take a look at the relationship going on between Karen Read and Turtle Boy and their attorneys. He even noted that Karen Read's attorneys, the two of them, Yannetti and Jackson, having numerous calls, and believe he said 29 calls each of them with Turtle Boy. And we know Karen Read had hundreds of calls with him. Show is over, said Hank Brennan. Now, what should the court do? Should they ex parte, as Hank Brennan suggested, look into this relationship? Because there is a legitimate concern of privileged discovery materials being improperly used. These are not co-defendants. These are two separate defendants. And Hank Brennan noted that they have shared discovery already. He said there's a history of it. Let's bring in our power panel now. Still with me, nationally known radio host John DePietro. I want to welcome in our legal eagles, Franz Borghardt and Casey Early. John DePietro, let me start with you, please. What do you think the judge should do?
You know, that's an interesting question, Julie, and it certainly caught everyone's attention when he did that. But what people need to understand is if you go back to that first article that came out, Gretchen Voss, Boston Magazine, she asked Karen Read, her and her team, have you ever communicated with Turtle Boy? She said no. She asked Turtle Boy, have you ever communicated with the Read team? He said absolutely not. It later was revealed that Karen Read essentially was using him as an instrument, sigging him on the witnesses, encouraging to go after Jen McCabe, who did nothing wrong, Brian Albert did nothing wrong, Colin Albert, who wasn't even in the house. So this relationship they formed, where he basically, Karen Read was even approving what he could put on his website. She leaked all discovery to him. She leaked the autopsy photos of John O'Keefe that we've seen where they claim it's dog bites. It's not dog bites. So make no mistake about it, he has been the instrument and the arm for Karen Read in trying to create confusion and create this whole hoax conspiracy.
Yes, and you've known this for a long time, John. Many people have, and finally, we have someone saying it. Hank Brennan, finally, we have someone, thank goodness for him. I'm sure all these witnesses are waking up so grateful that finally someone is standing up for them and saying no more of this bullying and harassment. We see what's going on. Down goes that house of cards. Casey Early, let me go to you next, please. Your thoughts on this?
You know, Julie, I have cases where I really had a good case for the defendant, and the defendant is the one that really messed it up. And in this case, Karen Read appears to be appealing to the court of public opinion, wrong court. And I applaud the judge because I could hear it in her voice yesterday. I already knew it was something unethical because you can hear the shaking in her voice and how she was very cautious of what she said. So down goes that portion. And I also applaud the prosecutor. Oftentimes when I practice, I always inform the jury that the prosecutor is supposed to seek justice and not a conviction. And I really believe the prosecutor in this case wants a fair chance at trial. And unfortunately, he's unable to do that without the help of the court. So I really believe that the judge is going to make the proper ruling in this case because she's appealing to the wrong party and she's going to be the cause of her downfall in trial.
Casey, I agree with everything you said. And you know what I was thinking as you were talking, if we had had Hank Brennan from the outset prosecuting this case, I don't think we'd be having this discussion here right now. He would have done it right from the beginning.
The first time.
Franz Borghardt, last but certainly not least, want your take, please.
Whose idea is this to get this attorney on the team? Is it Karen Read's idea? Is it her legal team's idea? Because candidly, I think it's an unnecessary, distracting move. And look, they've got bigger fish to fry at this point. Now, I suppose it could be said that who is on the Karen Read legal team may be changing in the very near future, depending on what comes out at our next court date with the judge with regard to this concerning information. Those are Turtle Boy's defense, Karen Read's defense are two different cases. And yes, they're intertwined and connected. But if I'm both of them, I don't want to have intermingling attorneys at the bench during the trial. I don't think that that's a good idea for either of them.
Sure, Franz. You know, and you touched on something we want to explore as well, is the possible implications that can Oh my, happened here. If the judge finds that this was a deliberate misrepresentation on the court, she can do a number of things. Franz, could we talk about this? What comes to mind for you as possible consequences here?
Well, the extreme consequence is removing the attorney from the case, and I don't know that that happens. Bar complaint could happen, but remember, there's a ripple effect of this information. If you have an expert, one of the issues with any expert is their credibility and their bias. And, you know, we heard like a drum being beaten. Hey, these federal witnesses have no reason to come here and lie. They're neutral and this, that, and the other. I think the bigger issue for the defense is not going to be who's still sitting at the defense table. I think the bigger issue for the defense is, look, court, you want to try your cases in the court of public opinion. You live by the sword, you die by the sword, and all of a sudden, everybody who's watching this is now like, well, wait a minute. I was drinking the Kool-Aid that these were neutral witnesses, but are they? And if any crack in the credibility happens, I can't trust you and I can't trust anything you're saying. That's a problem for Karen Read right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is huge. I mean, a pivotal day. It certainly was. John DePietro, I want to end the segment by asking you, you've been on the ground there, as we know, in the courtroom, talking to people in the community. You've had conversations with these innocent people, many of them very dear friends of John O'Keefe, the victim here. Could you tell us just how their lives have been affected? Because I feel like this story is the one that doesn't get told enough. And you've been one telling it, John, from the outset. Let's end the segment with these witnesses and what they've experienced, please.
You know, Julie, their lives have been turned upside down. And, you know, people at the end of your driveway, nonstop harassment. They've harassed a local business. But the McCabe family, they have children. The children face harassment. As much as people may say, oh, you know, turn off the TV or you don't go online, it's not a matter of that. You have some very strange and dangerous individuals that continually contact them, harass them, let alone call their phone at all hours. You had the rolling rally where they were in front of the house and pointing them out. They have been, you know, some of their neighbors have turned on them. These are people who did, and I want to stress, they did nothing wrong. They were friends of John. They agreed to do the right thing, step forward, testify in this. It should never have been tolerated. The Commonwealth never should have let it get to this point. But make no mistake about it, whether it's Brian Albert or Jen McCabe, their lives have never been the same since this started.
And that is just horrible. They certainly do not deserve that. They deserve to be respected. And they're going to be back giving testimony perhaps in this retrial. And what will it look like? Will all the attorneys be there? Will witnesses be excluded? What is going to happen? As Franz noted, there could be bar complaints. If the judge has found there's a fraud, she's got an obligation to report that. So does Hank Brennan. This is really serious stuff that's being investigated here, and we'll continue talking about it. Thank you all for the great discussion. John DePietro, I know we've got to let you go. Thanks for everything today, and be sure to check out John's show, Road Patrol Live. Thank you much. And our legal eagles, Casey and Franz, are continuing to talk with us. We want you to do the same, please. We'll hit a break. When we return, here's what's next.
Towards the end, the children apparently were getting a loaf of bread dropped off that was intended to last 3 to 4 days. So, I mean, obviously on so many levels, the conditions are horrendous and the situation terrible.
3 children in Michigan have been abandoned for years, investigators say, by their own mother. The pictures are stunning. We'll talk about it. And this is a stunning moment. A$AP Rocky's verdict announcement going viral. And then you see the dive into the gallery there. We're talking about the biggest takeaways from his trial. Welcome back to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. This morning, we're turning the spotlight on a horrifying discovery in Michigan. Officers finding 3 siblings living alone in deplorable conditions. And now their mother's waking up behind bars. This is what it looked like inside. And my friends, we even had to blur some of these images because it's just too disgusting. This home was filled with garbage and human waste, and the 2 girls and 1 boy, ages 15, 13, and 12, had been living like this for years. Years. Neighbors are stunned.
Everybody's upset about it, like, oh my God, this is right in our neighborhood. How could something like this happen?
My goodness. Now, this 34-year-old mother was living someplace else, apparently, and somebody would drop off prepared meals for the teenagers. Lately, it was just a loaf of bread. Officers were called when the landlord said that he hadn't heard from his tenant since December, and she hadn't paid her rent since October. You know, how could nobody know this was happening in this house? Let's talk about that. I want to bring in our guest. I want to welcome in the studio with me retired supervisor with the Department of Homeland Security. He's also a firearms expert and an author as well, Dr. Jason Piccolo. And of course, attorney Casey Early is standing by with us remotely to dig into this case. Dr. Jason, you know, you've come upon many scenes in your career. How do you think nobody knew about this?
You know, the thing is, they were sheltered. They were in place, and they were so scared to leave. Listen, when you live in your neighborhood, do you really look around at your neighbors? Do you see them that much? You know, my last neighborhood I lived in, I hardly ever saw my neighbors. So who's going to report it? And if they did see something, who do they report it to? So yes, they were sheltered and too scared to leave. So it's just a horrible situation, absolutely horrible.
It really is. Casey, you know, we talk all the time, not only are you such an outstanding lawyer, you're an outstanding mom too. And a lot of times, you know, your experience as a mother will inform things you think about in the courtroom and themes in trials. What do you think about this when you hear about the mom waking up behind bars and nobody knew what was happening in her home?
As she should. Julie, my heart breaks. I'll be quite honest, because I'm taking it from a perspective as a mother. Being a mother of 4 children, when I read this story, I could not understand how is it that you can abandon your children. I've heard of the 3 to 4 day drug binges, but 3 to 4 years. I would say the system did fail the children, and here's why. I know that they were abandoned around COVID. So even if they were online schooling, is there not a system in place to see that these children have not been in school? And then thank goodness she stopped paying her rent, because who knows how long this could have gone. I really thank goodness for the landlord as well, because he is the one that called for the welfare check. But the weekly drop off of food, the house was filthy as expected because they were children. The human waste, the mold, the garbage was reported to be as high as 4 feet. My heart breaks for these children. And this is why, side note, that we have to pray even when we don't know who the victims are. And not only does she need severe punishment, but obviously she needs counseling. And I'll say this last thing, the family. The children are now with relatives. So you mean to tell me the same relative that these children are with did not check on these children between the 3 to 4 years that there was weekly drop-offs? And whoever dropped off that food, they too should be punished, because I'm pretty sure that there were smells and they saw and witnessed what these children were experiencing. So I'm just heartbroken by this, and I pray that our children are saved.
Oh, I love everything you said, Casey. Thank you for all of that. And yeah, thinking about it, the last point you just made about how people who, the DoorDash delivery person, whoever it is dropping off something, you know, you might think, oh gosh, do I see something that looks, you know, I think we're in a day and age where everybody just wants to head down, mind their business, you know, where we need, do we not, Jason Piccolo, more people making a complaint. That's how oftentimes officers get the complaints about all the animals that have overrun a house, right? Somebody sees something when a neighbor opens a door. In fact, I got a clip from the sheriff. Let's take a look at his reaction.
It kind of reminds me of the commercials you see where animals are living in very deplorable conditions. Well, kind of take that times 10, and that's what the kids were living in for years.
Yeah, Jason, you know, if law enforcement doesn't have people willing to speak up and say something doesn't seem right, and how can anything get done?
We need a robust PR campaign for the police. And even if it's not just the police, the social work, the people will need to know that they can step up, they can see something, say something, and then report it and not be in fear themselves. You know, a lot of times people are afraid to go to the police with anything they have going on, so they don't want to rely on them. So have anonymous reporting, have some sort of system in place so they can do their investigation.
Right, right. This was just, it's hard to, it's unspeakable, yet it happened. Yeah, this was going on. I mean, look at this. I mean, the girls were sleeping on pizza boxes. The boy slept on a mattress. The boy told deputies mom abandoned them in 2020 or 2021. They weren't going to school. That was a question I had. Casey, apparently they found no one had gone to school. So for years, they're not going to school. The girls hadn't been outside in years. The boy went outside twice just to feel the grass, check the mail. I mean, you know, and it's like them needing a parent too to guide them. As I was seeing these things, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you realize just how dependent children are on mom and dad.
Indeed, Julie. I mean, we are nurturers. We guide, advise, love, care for our children, and they didn't have it. So they didn't know the difference between right and wrong. They didn't know that they had to clean up because they didn't have that guidance. They didn't have that love. And I know they're going to need counseling for trauma. They're going to need, you know, just that education. I mean, they pass time by playing games and just sleeping. This is not how children are supposed to live. Their innocence was stripped from them, and their mother and father, absentee father, is to blame for the situation.
So true. A great analysis from you both. Oh, this is one we are going to watch this case. Everybody's talking about it. We're going to watch when mom goes to court and see what happens. Jason, you're staying with us. Casey, I know we've got to let you go. Get to court today. Thank you for everything this morning. We'll see you again very soon. Absolutely. When we come back, we're talking about the biggest takeaways from ASAP Rocky's trial after he was found not guilty.
When you go into a trial, you try to eliminate surprises.
Did he ever use the N-word?
Yes, he did.
That was a surprise.
The goal was to get him to lie. Have you used that word?
Not that I recall, no.
Anywhere that he was involved was tarnished.
I was heard uttering the N-word 40 times. How do you pull that back? You don't.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? A Court TV original series. New episodes Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
We, the jury, the above entitled action, find the defendant, Rakeem Mayers, not guilty of...
ASAP Rocky found not guilty in his felony assault trial. The jury acquitting the rapper who was accused of shooting his childhood friend. The 3-week-long trial was full of heated moments between the attorneys. It also had the celebrity factor, of course. Rocky's partner, Rihanna, the mother of his children there. She was in court many of the days supporting her man. And, of course, the alleged prop gun took center stage in all this, right? That gun's still missing. That maybe was a big deciding factor for this jury. We know Rocky had some kind of gun in his hand, but the state had no gun to present at trial. Not a real gun, not a prop gun. There was no gun the jury ever got to see. They just saw some spent cartridge casings, but that doesn't tell us a whole heck of a lot. And we also know the officers on the scene couldn't find any of those casings when they responded. All right, so as Rocky gets back to making music, we're going to get to the biggest takeaways from the trial. Still with me, Dr. Jason Piccolo, who's also a firearms expert, served in our military. We thank him for that, and with the Department of Homeland Security, and attorney Franz Borgard standing by remotely. Okay, Dr. Jason, you brought us something to look at this morning, a little show and tell. What do we got?
We got a little prop gun. Well, it's not really a prop gun. It's more like a training gun. But this shows you the similar size and structure of what a real gun and a prop gun would be. So if you did pull this big thing out of your pocket, you'd be able to see it, be able to identify it. So obviously it wouldn't be bright green, but there would be a weapon just like this.
And that's the size of it. Okay, so that's the size of the gun that was in Rocky's hand. Just about, yeah. So the thing for you always, Dr. Jason, with this case was the casings. You were saying that's what's telling. Why is that?
Well, the issue with the casings is you can find them anywhere. Let's say you go to the local gun range, you could just grab a couple off the ground. There was no chain of custody for it, and that was the problem with me, is not having the police identify that shell casings on that location and bring the chain of custody to get them into court. Just grabbing casings anywhere, hey, you know what? Anybody can grab them.
And you made the point earlier that if they had the gun, that would have really told the whole story, right? You know, that would have said either way, either he did it or he didn't do it, but no gun, not a prop gun like you brought us today, not a real gun. Franz Borghardt, what were the biggest takeaways for you as you were watching this?
So besides the crowd surfing in the gallery after the not guilty, it looked like a woman was twerking in the corner. Listen, here's the takeaway. A bad case is a bad case. And if you try to make a bad case against a celebrity, it's still a bad case, right? If you don't have a gun and you're charging someone with assault with a firearm, that's a problem. Those cases don't normally go to trial. Those cases normally either don't get prosecuted or we see a plea agreement and some kind of resolution. I think the pivotal takeaway in this case is, look, if you want to go after him because you think he's doing criminal bad stuff, you're going to have to come better than a flimsy case about a firearm when you don't have a firearm, you don't have a chain of custody, you have sloppy police work. And it just, the sad thing is whether he's actually doing bad things or not, you're only making him more Teflon resistant because of this kind of prosecution.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said, Franz. You're right. Yeah, this was a stinker, as I like to say. I said it at the beginning. I said to my colleagues in our newsroom, when he rejected that deal, and I was like looking, I'm going, he rejected this. I said, I think this case is going to be a stinker, and PU, it was. Dr. Jason, tell me, when we think about the idea that he was carrying a prop gun, which the jury obviously believed here because they didn't go the other direction. In life, you've told us before on this program, but I think it's worth a mention again. What kind of an idea is that? Is that a safe idea?
That is one way you can get yourself killed. If you pull out a prop gun to someone who has a real gun, you are likely going to be injured, maimed, or killed. Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you seen many cases where somebody has a prop gun?
No. Why? I just don't get it. I don't get why.
Right.
You know? Makes no sense. Zero sense.
You know, Franz, do you think that's where they had to go with their theory because of that video with him with a gun in hand?
So I think they had to, and listen, I agree with you guys. It makes no sense, except if you are this sort of celebrity and you're trying to project an image, and that image you're trying to project, as ludicrous as it sounds, as ridiculous as it sounds, that image is, I have a firearm, but you don't really want to have a firearm. I mean, look, we're all armchair quarterbacking. It worked. As ridiculous as that defense sounds, it worked. And look, as you guys know, in trials, the line between silly and brilliance can be as simple as 2 words, not guilty.
Right, Franz. Line of the day, my friend, line of the day. I love that. All right, let's look at what some of the testimony that was taken, I said about the prop gun. Let's take a look.
When the gun is taken out and fired, Relly knows it is a prop gun, correct?
Yes.
You're telling me that when Relly is running around, that he still knows it's prop gun, correct?
He wasn't running around. He's head hips, so he's not running nowhere.
Okay. But that entire time, you're saying Relly knows it's prop gun.
Yes.
What's your understanding of what a prop gun is?
A prop gun is something that looks like a real gun. It doesn't fire a projectile. It makes the same noise. It looks like it. It's just, like I said, it doesn't actually shoot anything out of it.
Okay, we're just about out of time, but quickly, Dr. Jason, there were casings, but you have a theory on casings, don't you?
Yeah, those casings were not prop gun cases, and listen, we talked about it before. You could find casings anywhere. You can go to the range. Hey, you know what? There's 1,000 rounds on 1,000 casings on just grab down and pick up 2.
Yeah.
Boom, there you go.
And they're not hard to find.
No, not at all.
Right. Someone like you probably got casings all over the place,
do,
right? In your
everywhere.
car, in your pockets. Yep. Yep. Yeah.